I'm Joe Pardavila. This is the Forbes Books Podcast. And speaking of books, reading books hasn't changed much since Gutenberg built a printing press in 1454. But my guest today has combined old school books with cutting edge AR technology. Meredith Ochoa's journey to becoming an artist and entrepreneur was not an easy one. She struggled with her health for years, which caused her a great deal of pain and affected her ability to lead a normal life. But instead of letting this hold her back, she used it as inspiration for her art. Her work is a testament to her creativity and her commitment to using art as a way to heal and inspire others. And through her use of augmented reality, she invites folks to interact with her art in new and exciting ways. Meredith, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I want to start by big picturing it. So when I get people on the podcast, it's for one reason, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, then we'll talk about stuff. So the one thing that caught my eye was that you released a book that was using AR. So it was an interactive AR art book. That is a pretty cool idea. So tell me about first your relationship to AR. Was this always part of the plan, or were you really fascinated by that technology?
Well, in my artwork, I'm always pushing the envelope of challenging what a camera is, how art functions in our lives. I mean, I've invented my own processes. I'm always kind of looking outside the box of how to experience art. So when I first decided to write the book, I knew that it could not be just a regular book. And so I wanted, and I'm very big on like relationships and co-marketing and collaborative kind of dynamics with just people in the world in general. And I contacted company Overly, who does AR, and AR had always intrigued me because it's marrying the physical and the digital worlds a little bit. Of course, digital is never going to replace physical, but it's a different way to experience something. We do so much on the computer that never really, especially in art with all the layers that you have, never really gets seen. So it's a different way to just like immerse someone in the work. And especially coming from like a really purist photography background, I wanted to make a mockery of digital. So I turned a scanner into a large format camera.
Of course,
and
one does, yes.
Yeah, right. And that became like this whole other thing. And then of course now I'm like live in the digital dark room, right? So my work is kind of mirrors that relationship of marrying like really old world techniques like cyanotypes and cameraless photography and pinhole photography with really far out there digital work like augmented reality and Photoshop and composites and all of that. So it was kind of just like a natural inclination to go with AR. And I'm like, why not? Why has no one done this?
Yeah. It's really cool. And for the uninitiated, AR, augmented reality, for folks, when I use AR as an example, the two I always come up with is Pokemon Go, because millions of idiots were walking around the street getting hit by cars, walking around town trying to find a Pokemon on their phone because of with the AR technology. And the other is when you buy furniture online, where you can see how a chair or a couch looks in your room because of this AR technology. Why did you think it was helpful to tell your story in the book? Because I'm just trying to wrap my brain around like an AR book, because when it comes to augmented reality, it's augmenting the reality that's around you. So it's adding pictures or animation to anything you're doing in normal life. So how did you see it working when it came to a book?
Well, the short answer is there's a lot of really boring information in the book, health information that I'm like, this needs to be a different way to look at and really relate to health information. So the series in the book, it captures the first year of my Every Phase series, which is I'm still doing and it'll continue for the next 13 years. And it started actually as a response to just like a lot of my techniques, like the scanner technique started as a response to fuck digital. This started as a response to Beeple's. He sold, I don't know if people know the artist Beeple. But
he's the NFT guy, right?
The NFT guy, right. And he sold, like, at the time, someone may have beat him now, but it was the world's most expensive NFT. And it was called Every Days, 5,000 Days, where he made a piece of art every day for about 13 years, which 5,000 days. And I was like, at the time, I had just healed myself essentially from a long journey, 17 years of debilitating pain with endometriosis, which Western medicine, if you have endometriosis, you know the story. They basically gaslight the hell out of you and tell you it's all in your head and, have a baby and it'll just go away. Tons of lies out there about treating this. And it's very debilitating menstrual pain. And so I had educated myself and I read Alyssa Vitti's Woman Code and In the Flow. And I found out and realized that women are on a completely different hormonal biological clock, the infradian rhythm clock, where it's not just your period, right? It's every 28 days. It's 4 phases within that cycle, and it cyclically repeats up until menopause. And then you're just on the circadian rhythm, just similar to men. So all these clinical trials you see with drugs and all of that, they only do that based on the 24-hour clock, not on the 28-day woman's clock, which is why women have so much different reactions to these diets and drugs and trouble losing weight, because they're kind of living like men, right? On just solely honoring the 24-hour clock. So I took that, to make a long story short, I took that people's everydays and I was like, I'm so tired of the everyday 9 to 5, because, oh yeah, by the way, testosterone's highest around 9 and then drops off around 5. That's why we have the 9 to 5 workday. So I'm like, we're living in this world, which nothing against the man's biological clock. They've done a great job of optimizing their biology and biohacking. That's awesome. But it's extremely one-sided. Our whole world is built around that. And I was like, I'm so tired of these everyday projects and everyone rushing to get everything done by the end of the day. I want to make art every phase. And I'm going to educate people on what the infradian rhythm clock even is. And I'm not going to make it every day. I'm going to make it every phase. And so I'm living the art, because there's different brain and body chemistry for each phase: follicular, ovulatory, luteal, and of course menstrual. And so each of the pieces illustrates what's happening in the body for each phase. So a little bit deeper than it's a little bit different structure than people, right? So, but it essentially started, as a response. And that's how augmented reality, to get back to your question, kind of came up, because people with NFTs, I was like, I'm not going to make it NFT, which I still could make NFTs.
Sure.
But I was like, I'm going to have it be a book, augmented reality, and I'll do a whole series. Who knows what it'll become in the whole anthology at the end of the collection. But I knew for my I knew that I wanted to do something for my first year of making this work. And it became AR.
That's so cool. And it's safe to assume that this book and your journey is very autobiographical, because you talk about facing your shit, because this is how you faced it, and you're letting people, giving them the opportunity to face theirs. What is people's shit nowadays? Is it? I know life's complicated, but what is it? What is it? Is it just basically the planet? Is it their partners, their family, their job? What is, in essence, the shit?
Right. So it's essentially, facing your shit is the opposite of denial. It is a narcissist's worst nightmare. Facing your shit is facing yourself. It's facing your shadow. It's facing what you aren't conscious of. It's facing whatever you use a coping mechanism to feel better from. So we kind of live in this escapist reality, which philosophically is Luciferian in its roots, but it's basically, we deal with things by not dealing with them. We do a fake positive pump up, or we drink, or we smoke, or we do something to feel better. So we go around the pain rather than going into it. And so facing your shit, and that's a large portion of my journey, is facing those things, like the pain, the things that you're running from. Stop running from them and go straight through. So it really reinforces just the truth that the only way out is through. The only way out is in. It's not around, whatever you resist, and kind of it shapes your life, whatever you avoid. So most of the world, is kind of on the coping mechanism pathway. And a lot of it is disguised as just being positive, just pretending that things don't exist and saying, oh, well, if I'm just positive, it'll manifest in the way that I want it to. Well, if you really want to be positive, start telling yourself the truth. that's part of self-love, and start accepting yourself. And then when you're real with everything, then you can actually manifest and build a foundation much, much, much easier than trying to run from something that just doesn't feel good.
It's funny. I was just writing a piece for my Medium page about mistakes and the ownership of mistakes. We live in this sort of c'est la vie world where I was like, yeah, we make mistakes. It's good. We learn from our mistakes. And, and then what drives me crazy is when someone is doing their obligatory apology for something, they say, I'm human. And I was like, yeah, no kidding. We know you're human. But I think what that sort of mindset does is it sort of allows you to just sort of like brush off mistakes and not really learn from them. Because if you are say la vie about mistakes, it's the old entrepreneurial mindset, move fast and break stuff. If you don't
Yeah.
own it, you don't learn from it, because people just let go of these mistakes and don't want to improve the version of themselves. They don't want to upgrade from their 1.0 to 2.0 because they're not owning it. They're just kind of just letting it
Mhm.
go. What do you feel about that? You owning what your mistakes are and what makes you what you are.
Exactly. It's all of those things, all of like pain, mistakes, all of those things are messengers. It's trying to tell you something very valid, but we put all of the whole story of this is bad or this is wrong, pain is bad, or we put that story, but it's actually just a messenger. And even you screwing something up, it's a message for you. Like everything um is happening because of a very valid reason.
Hmm.
Even if people say, "Oh, you're overreacting." Well, probably that person is reacting the exact appropriate amount based on their beliefs.
Yeah.
So definitely responsibility is the key to freedom. Like
Mm.
owning it, taking responsibility, that is claiming who you are. That is claiming yourself, and therefore kind of liberating and finding your freedom, which is really a choice. It really is. It's claimed. It can't ever be taken away from you.
Yeah, and I feel like nowadays it's like every Instagram meme and every TikTok video is just all about like it's okay, it's all right for me. I mean, of course it's okay, but the thing is, you just got to take ownership of it. And I'm just curious about your journey to becoming this sort of AR artist, or just artist in
Mhm.
general. Was art always part of your DNA? Because I always am fascinated by people who knew what they wanted to do at an early age. Did you know that art was going to be your life, your running through your veins for the rest of your life?
So, no, I did not know that. Well, and I mean, I guess you could make the argument I was a ballerina for a long time. So I would say that, and a lot of people have the misunderstanding that creativity just means you're making art. No,
Mm,
no, no.
yeah.
There are many, many ways to enact your creativity and to enliven your creativity. Visual art is just one of those. But I never so I was a ballerina, and through dance and through movement was really what I thought my life was gonna be. I got super, super sick with an eating disorder in high school. I was definitely not supposed to graduate. I literally drew a smiley face on my SATs, like, did not care, like,
I
just
probably should have
something
done
that
that because I didn't do as well. You probably got a higher score with your smiley face than I did. But continue. I apologize.
I did. No, you're good. Yeah, I did. Well, art school kind of looks at that as a good thing. So it was like on a wing and a prayer that I even got into college, let alone just survived all of
Mm.
that. And I'm kind of putting all of this in a nutshell. But essentially, I healed myself through art. One day, there was a voice that literally just said, draw, just draw. And I did, and somehow I could, and it just came very naturally to me. I basically channeled everything that I was doing in ballet, I kind of, like, found through art, and it was the beginning of my healing. So art has always been connected in that kind of sacred healing way for me. I knew that. I mean, I guess that is pretty young.
Yeah.
That's right at 18. I don't think I had conceptualized like the impact of what was happening as I realize now. It's only in hindsight, like after going through everything else that I went through, because I still had endometriosis, still had going through all of that pain during that time up until just 3 years ago. So, and I'm 34 now. So that's a pretty long time. to be going through a lot of shit every month and getting run over by the train of pain, as I used to call it. So, yeah.
So since this is a Forbes Books podcast, and obviously business is always top of mind, how do you make a living as an artist nowadays? Sorry for being crass, but at the
No,
end of the
don't
day,
be.
Meredith got to eat.
Totally.
So how were you able to combine the world of art and the world of capitalism?
It's a great question. And I've had a long journey with this, and I'm so glad you asked that. And yeah, people shouldn't be more crass about it because it really needs to be looked at. So I began as an entrepreneur, and I've been out on my own and did photography and art and kind of played the game of, oh my God, do I have to take pictures of weddings and babies? And that's the only way to make money? Because the way the fine art world is built, it's based on permission, essentially, the gallery model and all of that. And a lot of that is dying out. So it's much easier now to kind of find your ideal client and not need the middleman of the gallery. But it's still in people's heads, this kind of permission based, someone else has to say it's good, I have to have a show mentality. So essentially, after doing that for like 5 or so years, which I never did weddings or really shot babies, and I kind of brought my own style to commercial photography, and I did like product shots and business stuff, and I worked for print labs, and I did a shit ton of retouching, Photoshop. So a lot of things around photography and art too. But what I found now is I was like, if I'm going to put the art first and not the business, which for me, the art always comes first, that's a choice that I'm making, then I don't really need to be in it full time. If the business I can have money and then that affords me to make art, great. So the full-time job that I currently have as a marketing and media manager really allowed me to be more creative because I don't have to ask my art to pay the rent. I love what I do so much that I don't want it all the time to be a business. I don't want it to be about selling. And in this world where money's required for everything, you have to have money from some source, right? And so I wanted to remove that from my art because shit gets really watery and muddled when you're making art to sell. Like it can't ever just be about the sale, or it's not going to be good work. So it's a very like we're walking on the edge of the sword always with this. And so when I did that, it's funny that I now have more art sales than I ever did when I was out on my own. Yeah.
That's fun. It almost reminds you of like, I don't know if you ever went through this, but when you were single, you couldn't get anybody to look at you twice, and then all of a sudden when you start dating, you're like, everyone's interested in you. The universe works in weird ways, doesn't it, Meredith?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. And that's just how it works though, because there's no like desperation, there's no resistance around it. It's just like, okay, that's on a shelf, money, cool. Coming from there, then my actual creative energy, I can make the work that I want because I'm not answering to a client. I'm not answering to anyone except for me. And I don't have to worry about how am I putting food on the table because I already know where that's coming from. And it allows me to be more relaxed and more creative. So I know that's a very taboo answer for a lot of artists. Listen, like if someone tomorrow was like, hey, I'm going to pay you like $1 million to do this commission for me, hell yeah, I think that'd be great. And it's great to, if you can make a living doing what you love with art and, have those two be synonymous, but it doesn't always work out that way. And that's okay. I think most people just the acceptance around that doesn't make you bad, doesn't make your work bad. It's just sometimes how your energy needs to be placed in the really screwed up world that we live in order to make a living and still have, all of your needs met and still be able to fulfill your creativity.
And you may obviously know a lot more artists than I do, but do they struggle with that as well? Because I always feel like there's this mythological story of the struggling artist, dying for their art. But, as we joked, you got to eat. Do artists struggle with what you've been able to come to terms with? Like, hey, listen, I got this job, and this job will make my artistic endeavors better because I don't have to worry about that other stuff. I don't have to worry about health insurance. I don't have to worry about if I
Mhm.
get a toothache, it's going to cost me all the money in my bank account. How do other artists deal with it that you've come across?
Other artists are definitely struggling for sure all the time. And it's either because I think also too, there's so much fog around how do I price my work? And
Mm,
again, just the permission based kind of gallery model, the really like old world that's just really the programming and all of that there. It's just really not good. So, and then people just also aren't educated in running a business. That's the other part. Just
yeah.
because you make great art does not mean that you are going to make money. And I think everyone thinks, well, if I just make good work, it's going to sell. No, no, no. It's finding, the people, it's making it consistent because we all have bills. The consistent income, I think, is definitely a big one. But I think a lot of artists really, really struggle with accepting that. And it's not for everyone. I found something, it took me a long time to find a kind of job, right? That also allows me a great deal of freedom to pursue other things. But I feel like if you put it out there, it'll come.
Mm.
Like if every day you do something that is contributing to your desire of, I really want to make money, but my art isn't doing that right now. So I still want to be able to make art and have this. It'll happen. Like if you do something that's contributing to
Mhm.
your desire every day, it will happen, like no matter what.
And one thing I love about your kind of vibe and the way you embrace your art is you have your own sort of handle, and it's another effing artist.
Hmm.
Talk to me about that. Why was that so important to be sort of not in place of your name, but why was that branding, again using a crass business word? Why was that so important to you to use that?
Another effing artist. Well, it really wasn't important. Well, it is. It's it's important in the sense of it's probably the most honest name that you'll ever hear because my belief is the best marketing strategy is telling the truth straight up. Just you can't beat that. And I feel like we live in this world where, first of all, it's just noting to the fact that the world of art is completely oversaturated with artists. So it's like, oh my God, another fucking artist. But then also, in a more kind of light and positive way, it's the dominant force in is creation. You have weeds growing through the sidewalk in the cracks of the cement.
Mm.
Like life and creation and creativity and art is the dominant force of the entire universe. So it's like kind of the anti-selling statement, but it's just acknowledging that I realize that what I do is unique, but I'm one of millions
Yeah.
of people.
But I will push back on that a little bit, the fact that, another
Mhm.
artist, there's so much art, because I always push back on the folks of like, oh God, another podcast. And, you've got a podcast, I've got a podcast, I produce dozens of podcasts. And my argument to that is this is people doing their thing. Like,
Mhm.
who cares? And my argument to that is like, hey, they're still making songs. There's
Mhm.
100 million songs. Do you ever say, man, when are they going to stop making songs? It's so because people need the outlet. So for someone like me who doesn't have any talent, I can do a podcast. And there's people
Yeah.
out there that, maybe they're a nurse or a hygienist during the day, and maybe they want to host a podcast at night and they want to talk to their friends. So whenever I hear people, and I know you were kind
Mhm.
of just joking about it, but when I hear people talk about,
Mhm.
oh, there's too much of this, too much of that, I'm like, who cares? What do you care? Like, let people do their thing. And if their thing is either doing a podcast or being an artist or just doing just about anything they want to do that makes them happy and makes them a total human being, I think that's good. So giving people that grace of like letting them do their thing, we need to do that. We need to
Mhm.
encourage people like you, people who may be listening to this right now being like, man, I don't know if I do this one thing, but there's like 600 million people doing the same thing. Who cares? If that
Yeah.
thing makes you happy, you have to do it.
Totally, and it's really poking fun at that statement that
Mm,
there's so many artists because it's, "Oh, another fucking artist." What basically a lot of people the next word that would come
yeah.
out of their mouth, "Oh, you're an artist? Oh my god,
Another
another
one.
fucking
Yeah, yeah,
artist."
yeah.
So I'm saying it for you. It's okay. But yeah. And then it's also just really fun and a little bit in your face because when someone has that as their business name, at least in my opinion, it means, oh, you're awake. You're not trying to necessarily sell me anything because you're basically saying, hey, listen, I know that it's oversaturated and we're in this game, but I am actually unique because I have this name and have addressed that.
That's cool. There's nothing more disarming than self-deprecation.
Yep.
And I've kind of made a career out of it because I've interviewed people that are way smarter than me. And the second that you point that out to them, they're all of a sudden like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I'm not that smart. And so
Mhm.
I think for people who are uncomfortable in their own skin, embrace that because I think
Mhm.
that is such a disarming trait for other people that they just don't know how to respond. I have a funny story. I went to I went to a Walgreens once and I picked up like toothpaste and I get to the counter and I will say one physical trait of mine that's okay is I have decent hair, especially for someone my age. And I
Mhm.
go up to the counter and the guy is bald. And he and I think I had just gotten out of the shower, so it was like long and flowing that day. I must have just had like what they call a good hair day. And he goes, "Man, not even in my dreams do I have hair that good." And
Wow.
so I said to him, "Well, it's the only quality I got, so it's not that big a deal." And then he felt sorry for me. He goes, "No, no, no, I'm sure you have other qualities." And I was just trying to make him feel better about himself, and instead he was doing that to me. So yeah,
I
so
love it.
it's always good to poke fun at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. And lastly, Meredith, I want to talk about this Robert Frost quote that you use a bunch, and it's "I took the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference."
Yeah.
Talk to me about that road for you, and where's it going?
That road was directly away from Western medicine. Listen, if you get hit by a bus, you better make sure you have a Western medicine doctor. However, everything else, chronic disease, Western medicine, or I should say Rockefeller medicine, because it's bought and paid for, doesn't have an answer for. And unfortunately, unless you go, well, it's unfortunate and it's also fortunate because there are actually a lot of experts and holistic naturopaths out there that can help you and do know. So the road less traveled in that aspect was basically going against everything that conventional doctors that literally looked at me and said, well, maybe you're just one of those people that has pain.
Hmm.
We don't know, take this birth control, have surgery. I did that. I did that road and it failed at every turn and caused a lot of damage that I didn't have to go through if I would have known the truth and the facts that are hidden for profit by that world. So the road less traveled is not being afraid too. You can't even, has a lot to do with courage, and facing your shit and just being honest about what's real for you. So that was definitely part of the road less traveled. And then in my work, not being afraid to do something that is really pushing the envelope and that people might not understand, not being afraid to make mistakes and taking the road less traveled in art and photography with AR, with inventing my own scanography process. It absolutely has made all the difference because it's what was true for me. And it's actually what really led me to my purpose
Hmm.
and even becoming an artist. So I could go on, but yeah.
So you found your thing, is what we're talking about. You found it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, take all the roads, but it's not even necessarily the road that you take. It's how you captain the ship, so to speak. It's
Mhm.
how you do something. Like, you can go, like, be conventional, be whatever, but it's how you're doing that and who you are. And really being able to even answer that question depends on you being honest enough or facing yourself or facing your
Mhm.
shit to even be authentic.
And for folks who want to experience your book, because you don't read your book, you have to experience your book. Where's the best place to go?
Yeah, so you can absolutely read. There's art, but there's also writing.
Yeah.
You can read it. It's both. And actually some of the AR, some of the words in the book are incorporated into the AR, which is really cool. But you can get on my website, meredithochoa.com, every phase. And I would definitely recommend the printed version because it's just fun to experience the actual art and have, be able to have original art and kind of get into that world for a much lower price point than usual. So there's that aspect of it. But then if you just want to have it be completely digital, there is an ebook version on Amazon as well.
Awesome. Meredith, thank you very much for the time. I know sometimes these conversations I have with folks go all over the place, so I appreciate you sticking with me there till the end. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.